This is Strictly Business, presented by the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Sponsored in part by the law offices of Young Wooldridge, San Joaquin Community Hospital. And now, here's your host, Cindy Pollard, President and CEO of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning. Welcome back. Joining me now is Jay Rosenlieb, who's also making me laugh. And aside from that, he is a partner in the law firm of Klein DeNatale Goldner et al. And he's here to talk about the importance of background checks and legal compliance for your company. Jay chairs the KDG Employment Law Group, representing management in employment litigation and counseling, with a practice focus on wage and hour law, discrimination and harassment, wrongful termination, and workforce downsizing, as well as representation of management under the National Labor Relations Act. Good morning, Counselor.
Good morning, Cindy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Glad to be here.
I'm glad you are here. First off, why is a background check important, and what should it entail?
Sure. You got to know who you're hiring. If it's a very, very important decision when you put together the costs of recruiting, hiring, training, in addition to, as a business owner, you're putting your business in your hands of people, and so you need to know who you're hiring. And so one of the tools to do that, of course, is the traditional interview and a review of the resume.
Right.
Another tool that we strongly urge our clients to use, of course, is the background check.
Okay.
And the background check, there are, not too surprisingly, federal and state laws that control background checks and when they can be done.
Right. And so I know when we do our hiring, we do use a background check, and there are several different background checks that can be done. So walk us through some of those and the importance of them. I mean, there's criminal background checks, there's financial and credit, There are several levels, as you indicate, and most employers don't need the incredibly intrusive background check that might be used by the federal government for secrecy-sensitive positions. Right.
That having been said, employers do have the opportunity to determine just how deeply they are going to go into the background of an individual. You mentioned several, but certainly a credit check, a court filing check, and beyond that, some employers like to interview associates and people identified with the individual. And with respect to all of those, there are restrictions that California has put in place on, for example, credit checks are limited to only particular persons or particular positions within a company.
Somebody who's going to be handling money.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone in a more senior position within the organization. But whereas it used to be that employers would do credit checks on all applicants, you can no longer do that in California.
Okay. Why a court record check?
Well, court record
for
check.
What positions?
Yeah, court record check is going to show any filings that they may have made, be it civil suits, be it small claims actions, and of course a court check is also going to reveal criminal convictions. Now, that is an area that is fraught with a lot of danger and something that employers need to be very careful when they do a criminal background check, because the law is very clear on the restrictions that can be that surround that entire area. You can only rely on convictions. Arrest records cannot be relied upon.
Now, was it a recent court ruling that says that question can no longer be included on applications?
No, actually it was a recent law here in the state of California. There are several states, now California is among them, that have adopted what are called ban the box.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yep, ban the box legislation. And here in California, that only applies right now to public employers.
Okay.
Whether that's extended to private employers is something that remains to be seen. But right now, it's just public employers.
Okay. So background checks are not required.
Oh, by no means are they required.
Okay.
But they're a really good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Helps you save both time and money.
Oh, it certainly does. There's a few dollars spent up front versus the time and money spent in, once again, engaging in that recruiting process and that hiring process, as well as usually the time and effort that is spent in saying, you know what, Bob just wasn't right for this position because of X and Y and Z reason. We're going to have to terminate Bob. And then you're looking at that difficult process of saying goodbye to Bob, as well as maybe some unemployment insurance claims, et cetera.
Right. Yeah. So there's you mentioned that there are both federal as well as state guidelines or laws in terms of what can and cannot be covered in reference checks. How do you balance the laws, staying in compliance, but getting the information that is going to be helpful to you and truly getting a good person for the job, somebody who has the skills, but is also not going to come with, I shouldn't say baggage, but if it's somebody that you're hiring for a position that handles money, you do the credit check, but you find that every year or two they're changing jobs. It gives you an indication that something is happening.
It
How do you
certainly
get
does.
at the root of that?
Yeah, it certainly does. And what I tell employers is trust your intuition.
Okay.
Trust your gut. And know that you decided to do that background check for a particular reason. Let's understand that when a job applicant comes in, they're looking to sell themselves.
Right.
And if you're at the point of doing a background check on them, you probably, as an employer, have already made the decision, wow, I like this person. And far too often what we see is, unfortunately, the background check gets done, and the employer says, oh gosh, there's some adverse information in here, but I really like Sally. I really like Bob. I'm going to hire them anyway. And so many times that employer will come to us and say, made a bad decision there, should have trusted my intuition, should have trusted my policy that says I'm going to do background check, and if there's adverse information, then I'm going to take action appropriately. I'm not going to hire the individual.
Right.
But the thing about, or the main objective, I should say, about state laws and federal laws as they control background checks is they want to make sure that the information that you develop is relevant or is in regard to that person that you are checking.
Right.
We know that there is so much information out there on the internet. There is so much stuff out on the internet. And oddly enough, surprisingly enough, I know I'm not going to surprise you, some of it's not accurate. I'm shocked, right?
Heavens to Murgatroyd. I thought everything on the internet was true.
And as a result, the main push of both the state and federal laws is to make sure that the information that the employer is relying upon is with respect to that applicant. And so both laws require that if there is some adverse information that is developed in the context of the background check, that employee have the opportunity to look at that adverse information and to confirm, yes, that is me and that is about me, or, gosh, no, there must be another person with my same name, and you have the opportunity, you being the applicant, then has the opportunity to review and dispute that.
Okay, interesting. So walk us through a background check process. You know, there are references that are listed, and you always want to try to talk to someone who worked previously. Of course, with the individual. An applicant's only ever going to give the names of people who are going to say good things about
Not
them.
going to list your 3 enemies.
Right.
Yeah.
So talk us through getting a good background check and checking of references.
Yeah, there are a number of pieces to it. One, of course, is the old traditional route of checking the references. And, of course, you're going to want to call them. You're going to want to ask questions. Would you hire this person? What was their work product like? And so on. Given laws as they are today, you may or may not get much of a response. Okay. But if the individual has listed them as references, then they're probably going to be cleared to give you information, and you gather the information. Okay. But in addition to that, employers are strongly urged to do the regulated background check, be it the credit check or the court records check, and so on. And you want to take a look at that information very carefully. Okay. That all begins with completion of a form by the applicant, in which the applicant clearly states that they are, in fact, agreeing to have a background check done, they consent to have it done, they release liability, etc. That form, the content of that form is required by both state and federal law. And so that's how the process begins. Okay. The employer then will contact their preferred provider of background information. There are many online. There are some local outfits. My strongest piece of advice is look for someone who has been in the business for a long period of time. And quite frankly, look for someone that you can develop a personal relationship with. Not one where you just enter information on an internet site, pay a little fee, and then boom, the information comes back. Make sure it's someone that you can talk with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should be somebody reputable.
Absolutely. It should be someone who is reputable, someone you can almost reach out and touch, certainly someone that you can talk to on the phone. Okay. Then you're going to get the information back from that source. And if there's some adverse information in there, state and federal law, as I indicated, require that you inform the employee that there is some adverse information in this report. The applicant is entitled to a copy of the report. Okay. There's a little checkbox where they can mark that they are that they want a copy of it. Okay. And then you as an employer can make the decision.
Okay. Just very quickly before we go to break,
Sure.
One last question.
Yeah.
What exactly can you reveal in one of those telephone background checks about a former employee?
Oh, okay. Now you're talking about the person who's responding to the call.
Yes,
right?
And there, plenty of our listeners out there are in a position where they get those calls.
Get those calls every day, maybe.
Exactly. So what can they legally say?
Well, what you can legally say is factual items. Okay.
Hire date.
End date.
Can you confirm a salary?
You can confirm a salary. You can confirm that they were employed there.
That they were employed there. Title.
And what you can confirm, if asked the question, is this person eligible for rehire? And if it is your policy to respond to that question, Civil Code here in California specifically permits employers to say, yes, eligible for rehire, or no, not eligible for rehire, or as our policy is, we decline to state. Yes.
Good information. Yeah. Jay, thanks so much for being here this morning.
You bet. Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm Cindy Pollard with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. You are watching Strictly Business. We're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll be at the closing bell with some upcoming programs, events, and activities that you won't want to miss. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Business exposure.
Connections with other businesses.
You want to